She left home pregnant, scared, penniless, but with her dignity intact. She went door to door, overcame her shame, and became a symbol of triumph. Now, thousands live by the strength she discovered when no one believed in her. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. She left home pregnant, scared, penniless, but with her dignity intact. She went door to door, overcame her shame, and became a symbol of triumph. Now thousands live by the strength she discovered when no one believed in her. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. Marina held the chamomile teacup between her hands, watching the steam rise slowly as the still, lazy morning filled the kitchen of that impeccable apartment in Kensington, London. At 27, 5 months pregnant, she should have been radiant, enveloped in that golden aura that maternity magazines talked so much about. But all she felt was a cold emptiness in her chest, as if someone had extinguished a light that once shone within her. The apartment was spacious, decorated with imported furniture, expensive paintings hanging on white walls, marble flooring that reflected every step taken inside. Everything was planned, meticulously organized, a perfect showroom for anyone looking from the outside. But Marina knew that showrooms are only made to impress, never to welcome, and she, a long time ago, had stopped feeling welcomed in that place she should call home. Roderick was in the living room, on the phone, as always. His voice echoed down the hall with that tone she knew so well, assertive, confident, calculating. He spoke of numbers, investments, deadlines. He always spoke of business. He never spoke to her. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. Marina placed the cup on the granite counter and instinctively brought her hand to her belly, feeling the gentle movement of the baby growing inside. It was a boy. She had found out at her last appointment, alone because Roderick had said he had an important meeting and couldn't accompany her. Important meeting. There was always an important meeting. There was always something more urgent than her. Marina remembered when everything was different, or at least when she believed it was. She met Roderick 4 years ago at a simple party in the neighborhood where she grew up, in the East End of London. He was different from the other boys she knew. He had ambition in his eyes, a huge dream of escaping that cramped life, of winning, of conquering the world. She fell in love with that determination, with that fire that seemed to burn within him. Roderick spoke of building an empire, of giving her everything she never had. And Marina, the daughter of a seamstress and a bus driver, who always saw her mother work double shifts to put food on the table, believed him. She believed every promise. She believed when he said he loved her. She believed when he swore they would do everything together, and she married him in a simple registry office with 2 witnesses and a bouquet of flowers from the market. Her mother cried that day, but Marina couldn't tell if they were tears of joy or fear. Perhaps her mother already knew something she couldn't yet see. At first, Roderick really worked hard. He woke up early, came home late, always with that sparkle in his eyes of someone building something great. Marina supported him as best she could. She cooked, organized the small house where they lived, waited for him patiently. But then things started to change. Roderick began to come home in more expensive clothes, watches she knew they didn't have money for. He said they were gifts from clients, bonuses from successful projects. She wanted to believe, but a small voice inside her whispered that something wasn't right. And then came the apartments, the cars, the trips. Roderick became rich at an alarming speed. Marina, who had always been naive about money, didn't ask questions. He said he was investing well, that he had powerful partners, that he knew where to put money to multiply. She tried to rejoice in his achievements, but she realized that the higher he climbed, the further she fell behind. He stopped sharing his plans with her. He stopped asking for her opinion. He stopped treating her as a partner and started treating her like a piece of decoration, something pretty to display at dinners and social events. Worst of all, Roderick never shared anything with her. Not the gains, not the decisions, not even the bank account. He controlled every penny that came in and out of that house. Marina had no credit card of her own, no access to accounts, no financial freedom whatsoever. If she needed to buy something, she had to ask, and listen to his condescending tone, as if he was doing her a favor, as if she were a child asking for pocket money. She tried to work months ago. She got a job at a clothing store in the shopping center. Roderick was furious. He said his wife didn't need to work, that it was a disgrace, that people would think he couldn't support his own home. Marina tried to argue that it wasn't about money. It was about her having something of her own, an identity beyond being Roderick's wife. But he was relentless. He forced her to refuse the job. And she, as always, gave in. Because giving in was easier than facing his coldness, the indifference that came after arguments, the heavy silence that hung over the house like a toxic cloud. And then came the pregnancy. Marina found out on an ordinary day, after 2 weeks of delay. She bought 3 different tests at the pharmacy. All came back positive. She sat in the bathroom looking at those pink lines, feeling a mixture of joy and terror. Joy because she always wanted to be a mother, because she thought a child could bring light to that life that was becoming increasingly dark. Terror because, deep down, she knew Roderick wasn't ready to be a father, not in the way that mattered. When she told him, Roderick just nodded, as if she had informed him dinner was ready. No hug, no kiss, no celebration, just an indifferent, "Oh, okay," before returning to his laptop. Marina felt her heart sink at that moment, but she tried to convince herself that he was just processing the news, that he would soon be happy, that he would soon show some enthusiasm. But the enthusiasm never came. The pregnancy progressed, her belly grew, and Roderick remained distant. He didn't go to appointments, didn't ask how she was feeling, showed no interest in the baby growing inside her. On the contrary, he seemed bothered by the changes in her body, by the fatigue, by the limitations that pregnancy brought. And Marina, alone in that immense apartment, went to appointments alone, saw the ultrasound alone, heard her son's heartbeat alone, and cried alone. It was during one of these appointments that she met other pregnant women in the waiting room. Women accompanied by their husbands, partners, mothers. They chatted animatedly about baby clothes, names, how anxious they were. And Marina sat in a corner, pretending to scroll on her phone so as not to appear as lonely as she truly was. One of the nurses, a grey-haired woman with a gentle smile, sat next to her one day and asked if everything was all right. Marina said yes, with that automatic smile she had learned to use as a mask. But the nurse looked deep into her eyes and quietly said that lying to others is easy, but lying to oneself is dangerous. Marina never forgot those words. Things got worse when Marina found out about Giselle. It wasn't a dramatic discovery, with a caught-in-the-act moment or confrontation. It was gradual, like water filling a glass until it overflows. Roderick started going out even more, coming home even later, always with ready excuses. And then, at a business dinner he forced her to attend, Marina saw the woman. Giselle was tall, blonde, impeccably dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than Marina spent in 6 months. She was next to Roderick, laughing at something he said, touching his arm with a familiarity that left no doubt. Marina felt her stomach churn, but she maintained her composure. Roderick introduced Giselle as a business partner, an important investor. But Marina was not an idiot. She knew that look, she knew that body language. And when she went to the bathroom in the middle of dinner and saw a message on Roderick's phone that he had left on the table, she had no more doubts. The message was short, direct, too intimate to be just professional. She confronted Roderick, that same night in the car on the way home. He denied it at first, then became irritated as if she was being jealous and paranoid. He said Marina was seeing things that didn't exist, that the pregnancy was making her too emotional. And then, when he realized she wouldn't give up, he finally admitted it. But he admitted it in a cruel way, calculated to hurt. He said Giselle was different, that she was a businesswoman who understood his world, who was on the same level, that Marina would never be able to keep up with him, that she was too simple, too limited, that he needed a partner who added value to his life, not just occupied space. His words were like sharp knives, entering Marina's chest one by one. She cried, pleaded, asked why he had married her then, and Roderick, with a coldness she had never seen before, said that at the time she was enough, but that he had evolved and she had been left behind. Marina spent the following weeks in a state of shock. She didn't know whether to stay, to leave, to scream, to be silent. Roderick continued with his life as if nothing had happened. Giselle started frequenting their home openly, always with the excuse of work meetings, and the worst was the way she looked at Marina. A look of disdain, of superiority, as if Marina was a poor wretch who didn't deserve to be there. In one of these encounters, with Roderick in his office taking a call, Giselle approached Marina in the kitchen and said, with a poisonous smile, that weak women are always left behind, that the world had no place for those who didn't know how to play the game. Marina, pregnant and vulnerable, couldn't respond. She just lowered her head and felt the tears burn her eyes. It was the neighbor from the apartment next door, Lucy, who began to notice that something was wrong. Lucy was a woman in her 40s, divorced, mother of 2 teenage daughters, who worked selling cosmetics and perfumes door to door. She and Marina sometimes greeted each other in the corridor, but they had never really talked. Until one day, Marina was sitting in the building's lobby, crying softly after another argument with Roderick. Lucy passed by, saw the scene, and without asking permission, sat next to her. She didn't ask invasive questions. She just sat there in silence, offering her presence. And when Marina finally managed to speak, Lucy listened. She heard everything: the loneliness, the betrayal, the control, the humiliation. And when Marina finished, exhausted, Lucy held her hand and said something that would change everything. She said Marina was not alone, that thousands of women lived the same silent hell, trapped in relationships that slowly sucked the life out of them. She said that leaving was terrifying, but that staying was dying slowly. She said Marina had a child growing inside her, and that this child deserved to see his mother standing tall, strong, mistress of her own life, not a broken, submissive, faded mother. Lucy's words planted a seed, a small but powerful seed. And Marina began to think. She began to imagine a different life. She began to realize that perhaps, just perhaps, she could be more than that silent shadow wandering through that cold apartment. But the decisive moment came on a Friday night, 3 weeks later. Roderick came home with Giselle. They were laughing, visibly drunk, parading through the living room as if Marina wasn't there. She was sitting on the sofa, her belly already prominent, reading a book about motherhood. Roderick looked at her with that look she hated, a look that said she was a nuisance, a problem to be solved. And then he said, with casual cruelty, that Marina needed to pack her bags and leave, that her presence was harming his image, that important clients were asking questions about his pregnant wife, and that this was complicating business, that it would be better for everyone if she left discreetly. Giselle, next to him, smiled, a triumphant, malicious smile. Marina felt the world collapse. She asked where he expected her to go, pregnant, penniless, with nothing. Roderick shrugged and said it wasn't his problem, that she should fend for herself, that she should have thought about that before becoming so dependent. That night, Marina didn't sleep. She sat on the bed in the dark, listening to the sounds of the city outside. She thought about calling her mother, but knew her mother could barely support herself. She thought about begging Roderick to change his mind, but knew it would be useless. And then she thought about the child she carried. She thought about what she would say to that boy when he grew up. Would she say she stayed? That she accepted being treated like dirt because she was afraid? Or would she say she fought? That she left? That she chose dignity? On Saturday morning, Marina packed a small suitcase with the little she had. Some clothes, documents, family photos. Roderick was asleep, hungover from the night before. She wrote a short note. She didn't say where she was going because even she didn't know. She just wrote that she was leaving, that she wouldn't be back, and that he would hear from her only through a lawyer. She left. The apartment, with the suitcase in her hand and her heavy belly, went down the elevator she had so often descended with a feeling of being trapped. But this time it was different. This time she was leaving. She was choosing to leave. She was choosing to breathe. Lucy opened the door before Marina even knocked, as if she knew that moment would come. She didn't ask questions, didn't make judgments. She just opened her arms and let Marina cry. Cry all the accumulated pain, all the swallowed humiliation, all the suffocated anger. And when Marina finally stopped crying, exhausted, but strangely light, Lucy said she could stay there as long as she needed, that her daughter's room was empty because they had gone to spend the weekend with their father. Marina thanked her with a choked voice, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something she thought she had lost forever. She felt hope, small, fragile, but alive, because leaving was just the first step. The path would be long, difficult, full of obstacles, but she was walking, and that, at that moment, was all that mattered. In the following days, Marina settled into Lucy's apartment. It was a small, simple, but welcoming space. There was life there, photos on the walls, plants on the balcony, homemade food in the fridge, everything so different from that magazine-perfect apartment where she had lived. Here it was real. Here it was human. Lucy worked during the day, left with a bag full of beauty products, and returned at night with stories of clients, sales, small victories. Marina watched everything with curiosity. She had never thought of selling anything, but she urgently needed to find a way to support herself. She couldn't depend on Lucy's generosity forever. It was during one of those evening conversations, with the two of them sitting in the small living room drinking tea, that Lucy made the proposal. She asked if Marina wanted to try reselling the products with her. She said it wasn't easy, that it required dedication and the courage to knock on doors, but that it was an honest way to earn money, and that many women in the same situation as Marina had managed to rebuild their lives through direct sales. Marina hesitated. She had never been a salesperson. She had always been shy, quiet, not very talkative. How would she convince someone to buy anything? But then she thought of her growing belly, the expenses to come, the baby who would soon need diapers, clothes, medicine. She thought she had no choice. Either she tried or she sank. She accepted. Lucy celebrated, hugged Marina, and said that together they would go far. The next day she set aside some products for Marina to start. She explained the prices, the profit margins, gave tips on how to approach people, how to overcome objections, how to close sales. Marina wrote everything down in an old notebook Lucy gave her. She wrote with neat handwriting, as if she were studying for an important exam, because deep down that's exactly what it was. A test that she could support herself. The first outing to sell was terrifying. Marina chose a nearby residential neighborhood and started ringing doorbells. Her heart pounded with every door. Many people didn't even open. Others opened and quickly closed, uninterested. Some were rude, saying they didn't want to be bothered. Marina felt like giving up with every rejection, but she continued, because giving up would mean returning to that place of dependence, of submission, of emptiness. And then at the 10th door, an elderly woman with white hair and a gentle smile opened. She listened to Marina explain about the products, browsed the catalogue with interest, and ended up buying a lipstick and a moisturizing cream. It was only £50 in sales, but for Marina it was like winning the lottery. It was the first money she had earned herself, money no one had given her, money no one had controlled, her money. She came home that night with sore feet, but a light heart. Lucy celebrated with her as if she had closed a £1 million contract, and that night, lying in the borrowed room with her hand on her belly, Marina whispered to her unborn son that things would get better, that she would fight, that they would be all right. It was just the beginning of a journey that would change everything. But Marina didn't know that yet. She didn't know that from that small £50 sale an empire would be born. She didn't know that the broken and humiliated woman who left that luxury apartment would transform into someone thousands of people would admire and be inspired by. She didn't know that. The pain she felt at that moment would be the raw material for the greatest victory of her life. For now Marina only knew that she had left, that she had chosen courage instead of fear, and that every step, no matter how small, was taking her away from that silent hell and closer to a version of herself she didn't even know yet, but which was already beginning to awaken. The weeks that followed were of slow but profound transformation. Marina woke up early every day, prepared a simple breakfast, checked the product catalogue and went out to work. Work. What a strange and liberating word at the same time. For the first time in her adult life, she had an occupation, a purpose that went beyond serving someone or waiting for crumbs of attention. Every door she knocked on, every client she served, every sale she closed, was a small victory against the internal voice that still insisted on telling her she wasn't capable. Lucy accompanied Marina on her first outings, teaching her practically how the job worked. She showed her how to approach people without being intrusive, how to create genuine connection, how to listen to needs before offering products. Marina observed everything with the attention of a dedicated student. She realized that selling wasn't just about pushing merchandise, but about understanding people, building relationships, offering solutions. And in this, surprisingly, she was good. Her natural sweetness, her empathy, her ability to listen without judging, made clients open up to her. One afternoon, while serving a client in a simple house in Camden Town, Marina noticed that the woman was downcast, sad. While showing the products, she gently asked if everything was all right. The client, a housewife in her 50s, broke down in tears. She said her husband had lost his job, that the household income had halved, that she felt ugly, old, worthless. Marina, already 6 months pregnant, sat next to her at the kitchen table and held her hand. She said she understood the pain of feeling invisible, of feeling worthless. She said that she herself was rebuilding her life from scratch, pregnant and alone, and that if she had learned anything, it was that a woman's worth never depended on having a man by her side or money in the bank, that her worth was in getting up every day and trying again. The client stopped crying, wiped her tears, and hugged Marina tightly. She bought 3 products that day, but the most important thing was what she said as Marina was leaving. She said that if Marina, pregnant and with nothing, was fighting, then she could too, and that she wasn't going to give up. Marina left that house with tear-filled eyes, but with a warm heart. She was beginning to understand that her job wasn't just selling lipstick and perfume, it was about restoring hope. It was about showing other women that starting over was always possible. That night, back in Lucy's apartment, Marina told the story. Lucy smiled and said that was exactly why she loved what she did, because every sale was a chance to touch someone's life. Marina reflected on that. For the first time in her life, she felt she was making a difference. Even if small, even if silent, she was leaving a positive mark on the world. Sales began to grow. Marina organized a simple spreadsheet in a notebook to control orders, payments, profits. Numbers had never been her strong suit, but she was learning. Every pound that came in was counted, saved, planned. She set aside a part to help with Lucy's household expenses, another to buy baby clothes and supplies, and saved the rest in a savings account she opened in her own name. For the first time, she had her own bank account. Small, modest, but hers. Entirely hers. One day, Lucy came home excited. She had talked to other resellers and they mentioned that many salespeople were finding success on social media. They posted photos of products, recorded videos showing how to use them, created content that attracted clients. Lucy suggested Marina try it. Marina was hesitant. She had never been active on social media. When she was married to Roderick, he controlled even that, saying his wife didn't need to expose herself on the internet. But now she wasn't anyone's wife anymore. She was her own mistress. Lucy lent her phone to Marina to record her first video. It was awkward, shaky, with a crooked camera and poor lighting. Marina shyly introduced herself, talked about the products she sold, showed some lipsticks. She posted it on the personal profile she had created days earlier. With only 20 followers, mostly childhood friends and distant acquaintances. She expected nothing. But the next day, when she checked the notifications, she was surprised. The video had 50 views and 3 comments from women saying they liked it, that they wanted to know more. That ignited a spark. Marina recorded another video, this time more prepared. She researched online how to get good lighting with what she had at home, positioned the phone better, rehearsed what she was going to say. She talked about how to choose the right lipstick for each skin tone, did demonstrations, laughed at her own mistakes. She posted it. The views doubled. The comments increased. And then, something unexpected happened. A follower tagged 3 friends, saying they needed to see it. The friends came, watched, shared, and suddenly Marina had 100 followers. Lucy was thrilled. She encouraged Marina to continue, to record more, to be consistent. Marina began to create a routine. Every day in the late afternoon, after returning from in-person sales, she recorded a video. She talked about makeup, about self-esteem, about how to take care of oneself even without much money. She shared practical tips, cheap tricks, creative solutions, and always she wove her own story into the lines, not explicitly or dramatically, but subtly. She spoke of new beginnings, of courage, of not giving up. And people connected. Women from all over the United Kingdom began to follow Marina. They commented, sharing their own stories of abandonment, loneliness, struggle. Marina responded to every comment, created genuine connection, showed that on the other side of the screen was a real person who understood their pain because she was feeling it too. It was when Marina posted a video talking about single motherhood that everything exploded. She was sitting on Lucy's balcony, her belly already large, holding a baby grow she had bought with her sales. Money. She talked about the fear of raising a child alone, about the insecurity of not knowing if she would be enough, but also about the strength she discovered within herself that she never imagined she had. She talked about how every kick of the baby in her belly reminded her that she wasn't alone, that someone depended on her, and that this made her want to be better every day. The video went viral. In 48 hours, it had over 10,000 views. Marina's followers jumped from 200 to 2,000. Bloggers and influencers began to share, saying that the content was real, authentic, necessary. A digital maternity magazine asked permission to repost it. Marina, overwhelmed by it all, accepted. And when the magazine reposted, tagging her profile, the numbers exploded again. 5,000 followers, then 8,000. In 1 week, Marina had 10,000 people following her journey. Lucy was overjoyed. She said Marina had a gift, that her authenticity was magnetic, that people needed what she was offering. Marina, in turn, was still processing everything. She looked at the growing numbers and felt dizzy. How was this happening? How was a simple cosmetics reseller, pregnant and with nothing, reaching thousands of people? Sales soared. Clients from London, Scotland, Wales, and the entire north of England began to order products. Marina couldn't keep up alone. She needed to organize herself, create a waiting list, establish specific days for deliveries. Lucy helped as much as she could, but she also had her own sales and clients. That's when Marina had an idea. What if she created a group of resellers, women who were also in difficult situations, who also needed a chance, who also wanted to rebuild their lives? She could sell the products to them at a special price, and they would resell them in their cities, generating their own income. She talked to Lucy about the idea. Lucy loved it, said it was brilliant, that it could work. Marina created a group on the messaging app and started promoting it. In 3 days, 50 women joined. Women from different regions, different stories, but all with something in common. They all wanted a chance. Marina held a video call with all of them, explained how it would work, answered questions, welcomed fears. And at the end of the meeting, everyone was excited. Marina's first network of independent resellers was born there. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses. Roderick watched everything from afar, through fake profiles he created to spy on Marina. He saw her growth, saw the compliments, saw people calling her an inspiration. And that deeply bothered him. How was that woman he considered weak, limited, shining without him? How was she achieving alone what he always said she never could? In a fit of rage and wounded pride, Roderick sought a lawyer. He invented an absurd story saying that Marina was defaming him on social media, that she was using his image to gain followers, that she was tarnishing his reputation. The lawyer, as unethical as Roderick, accepted the case without even verifying if there was any basis. They sent an extrajudicial notification to Marina, demanding that she stop posting content, take down her profile, and cease any direct or indirect mention of him. Marina received the notification on an ordinary morning. She was having coffee with Lucy when the envelope arrived. She opened it, read it, and felt her legs weaken. Lucy took the paper from her hand, read it too, and was indignant. She said it was absurd, that Marina had never mentioned Roderick's name, that it was just an attempt at intimidation. But Marina was terrified. She understood nothing about laws, lawsuits, courts. She was afraid of losing everything she was building, of being forced to stop. Lucy didn't let Marina sink. She called a lawyer friend, Renee, who did volunteer work for women in vulnerable situations. Renee analyzed the notification and laughed. She said it made no sense, that it was an empty attempt to scare Marina, that she didn't need to worry. Renee offered pro bono help, said she would respond to the notification technically and forcefully, dismantling every argument. And that's what she did. In 3 days, she sent a devastating response showing that Marina had not committed any illegality, that she had the right to freedom of expression, and that any attempt to sue would be easily dismissed. Roderick retreated, but the anger continued to grow, and Giselle, always by his side, fueled that resentment. She said Marina was succeeding on the back of misfortune, that she was playing the victim to gain attention. And then Giselle had a malicious idea. Marina had announced she would do a live stream next Friday to present something new to her followers. Giselle decided she would sabotage that live. She created dozens of fake profiles and planned to invade the broadcast with offensive comments, false accusations, trying to destabilize Marina live. Friday arrived. Marina was nervous, but excited. She had secured a partnership with a small cosmetics laboratory that agreed to produce a line of products under her brand. Nothing too sophisticated yet, just a few basic items with simple packaging, but it was hers. For the first time, she wasn't just reselling, she was creating, and she wanted to share that achievement with the people who had supported her from the beginning. The live stream began. Marina was in Lucy's living room with improvised but careful lighting. She started speaking, thanking everyone for their support, recounting her journey so far. And then, just as she was about to introduce the products, the comments started. Unknown profiles filling the chat with insults, accusations, horrible messages. They called Marina a liar, an opportunist, a gold digger. They said she was inventing stories to make money, that her ex-husband was probably innocent and she was the villain. Marina froze. She saw the comments multiplying, saw the live stream being invaded by that wave of hatred. She felt her heart race, her hands tremble, her voice disappear. Lucy, who was beside her, realized what was happening. But before she could act, something unexpected happened. Marina's real followers began to fight back. They defended Marina in the comments, reported the fake profiles, held the line with arguments, with affection, with loyalty. And then, one of the followers, a programmer named Jessica, posted a technical comment showing that all those aggressive profiles had been created on the same day. From the same IP, clearly they were bots or coordinated profiles. Jessica's comment was seen by everyone, and the narrative turned. Suddenly, it wasn't Marina being attacked anymore, it was Marina being defended. People began to understand that there was a clear attempt to sabotage her live stream, and that generated outrage. Influencers with millions of followers who were watching the live stream began to share, exposing the sabotage attempt, asking for support for Marina. The live stream video circulated throughout the United Kingdom that night, and the next morning, Marina had 30,000 new followers. Giselle was desperate. Roderick too. The attempt to destroy Marina had devastatingly backfired on them, because now, not only did Marina have more visibility than ever, the story of the sabotage was everywhere. Digital news pages, feminist profiles, major influencers all talked about the pregnant reseller who was being attacked for daring to succeed. The public narrative was no longer about products or sales. It was about resilience, about courage, about a woman who refused to be silenced. Marina, still processing everything, recorded a video the next day. She didn't talk about the attack directly. She simply thanked the support, said that it showed the strength of the community that was being built, and that nothing would make her give up. She said that every attempt to bring her down only made her rise stronger. And then, for the first time, she said something she hadn't planned. She said she knew there were people trying to destroy her, but that she felt sorry for them, because those who try to extinguish the light of others live in darkness, and that she chose to be light. The video had millions of views. Brands began to seek Marina, offering partnerships, big brands with tempting offers. But Marina was suspicious. She talked to Lucy, to Renee, to other resellers in her network, and she made a bold decision. She wasn't going to accept being anyone's spokesperson. She was going to create her own brand for real. Not just outsource products with her name, but build something solid, authentic, that represented everything she believed in. She used the money she had saved from sales, plus some spontaneous donations that followers made wanting to support the project, and invested in a larger production. She hired a freelance designer to create a beautiful but accessible visual identity. She partnered with another, larger laboratory that agreed to produce a more complete line, and she officially registered her brand. The name was a tribute to everything she had lived through. She called it New Beginnings because that's exactly what she was offering, to herself and to all women who believed that it was still possible. The official launch of the New Beginnings brand was scheduled for a month later. Marina used that period to structure everything. She created a simple but functional website, organized a stock, registered the resellers in her network as official distributors, giving them exclusivity in their regions. Each reseller was a woman with a story of triumph. Single mothers, ex-victims of abusive relationships, women who had been discarded by the job market. All had something in common. All wanted to prove they were capable. Marina, 8 months pregnant with a huge belly, swollen feet, worked 12, 14 hours a day. Lucy begged her to slow down, said she needed to rest, that the baby was coming. But Marina couldn't stop. She felt she was in a race against time. She needed to launch the brand before the baby was born, because she knew that afterwards the routine would be even more chaotic. And above all, she needed to prove to herself that she could do it. That the woman who left that apartment humiliated with nothing was capable of building something grand. The night before the launch, Marina didn't sleep. She stayed awake, reviewing every detail, checking the website, answering messages from resellers. Lucy entered the room and sat on the bed next to her. She asked if Marina was scared. Marina took a deep breath and said she was terrified, but that fear wouldn't stop her. Lucy smiled, held Marina's hand, and said she was immensely proud of her. That she had seen Marina enter that apartment months ago, broken, lost, hopeless. And now she saw a strong, determined woman, capable of moving mountains. She said Marina's son would be very lucky to have a mother like that. Marina cried, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude, relief, recognition. Recognition that she had traveled an impossible path and was there on the other side standing tall. The next day, at 10 in the morning, Marina posted the official launch video of the New Beginnings brand. She was beautiful, in a simple but elegant outfit, her huge belly embraced by her own hands. She spoke about the journey, about the falls, about the new beginning. She invited all women who felt lost, small, incapable to believe again, and she presented the products, simple, honest, accessible, but made with love and purpose. The website crashed in half an hour. The demand was so great that the servers couldn't handle it. Marina, desperate, called technical support, who worked frantically to get everything back online. When the site returned, in 2 hours, all the products from the first batch were sold out. Marina looked at Lucy, incredulous. They had sold in 2 hours the stock they imagined would last a month. That night, exhausted but fulfilled, Marina lay in bed and placed her hand on her belly. She felt the baby move, that gentle movement she knew so well, and she whispered softly that she had done it, that he would be born into a safe home with a mother who had her own income, her own dignity, her own life, that he would never see his mother humiliated, never see his mother submissive. He would see, yes, a warrior mother who taught him that falling is allowed, but staying on the ground is never an option. The success of the New Beginnings brand was overwhelming and too fast for Marina to fully process. In less than a month, what began as a desperate attempt at survival transformed into a phenomenon. Social media wouldn't stop talking about her. Articles in news portals highlighted the trajectory of the reseller who became a millionaire entrepreneur. Podcasts on female entrepreneurship requested interviews. Universities wanted her to lecture on resilience and triumph. And Marina, 9 months pregnant, with a tired body but a spirit aflame, tried to balance everything. Lucy's apartment, which had always been cozy but small, was now filled with product boxes, stacks of orders, samples of new packaging. Marina urgently needed her own space, not just to work but to live, to raise the child who was about to be born in an environment that was solely hers. Lucy, always generous, insisted that Marina could stay as long as she needed, but Marina knew it was time to take the next step. With the profits from sales, Marina finally managed to buy an apartment. Not rented, bought. It was a simple, 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood, Islington, but it was hers. Totally hers. She signed the deed at a notary's office, holding David, in her arms with Lucy by her side. When she received the keys, Marina kissed her son's forehead and whispered that this was their house, their home, built with dignity and honest work. Lucy helped Marina move. There wasn't much to take, just some clothes, documents, the initial stock of products. Marina bought essential furniture from department stores, nothing too expensive, just what was necessary. A single bed, a simple white crib, a chest of drawers for the baby's clothes that followers had gifted. The apartment was modest but cozy. For the first time since leaving Roderick's house, Marina felt she was building a real home. In the following weeks, Marina worked hard to consolidate the brand. The New Beginnings network of resellers multiplied. There were already over 200 women spread across the United Kingdom, each with her own story, each with her own purpose. Marina created a group where everyone could chat, share experiences, and support each other. That group became more than a commercial network. It became a community. Women who had never met in person, but who felt like sisters in struggle. It was during one of these conversations in the group that one of the resellers, Camilla from Manchester, suggested that Marina create an online course teaching other women how to resell products, create digital content, and position themselves on social media. Marina found the idea interesting, but she was insecure. Would anyone pay to learn from her? Did she have enough credentials to teach anything? Lucy, always the voice of reason, said that Marina had exactly what people wanted to learn: authenticity, courage, the ability to connect, and that her story alone was a course in triumph. Marina decided to try. She structured a basic course, recorded simple video lessons with her phone, and created digital handouts. She charged a symbolic fee just to cover the hosting platform. She timidly promoted it on social media, without much expectation. In 24 hours, 500 women signed up. Marina was in shock. She called Lucy in the middle of the night crying, saying she couldn't believe what was happening. Lucy laughed and said it was time for Marina to believe in her own potential. The course was a success. Students praised the simple teaching, the accessible language, the way Marina shared not only techniques but also encouragement. Many sent private messages saying that the course had changed their lives, that they had started selling, that they were regaining their self-esteem, that they were believing in themselves again. Marina responded to every message, moved. She realized that her purpose went far beyond selling cosmetics. It was about restoring the dignity of women who had been broken by life. While Marina flourished, Roderick sank. The illicit schemes he had maintained for years began to crumble. A federal investigation into embezzlement and corruption reached him. Compromising documents came to light, fraudulent contracts, offshore accounts, bribes disguised as consultancies. Roderick tried to use the same tricks he always had: bribes, threats, influence. But this time it didn't work. The operation was too big, too coordinated, too serious. His assets began to be blocked, accounts frozen, cars seized, apartments sealed. Clients and business partners disappeared. No one wanted to be associated with him. Giselle, who had always been by his side out of interest, vanished as soon as she saw the tide turn. She no longer answered calls, blocked his number, disappeared to another region. Roderick was alone, completely alone. Something he never imagined would happen. After all, he was the powerful one, the successful one, the one who controlled everything. But power built on lies crumbles quickly. Marina knew nothing of this. She was immersed in her own world, focused on the brand, on projects, on preparing for the baby's arrival. But the news reached her through an online article. A follower sent the link one day with the caption, "Look who's in the news." Marina clicked, read, and felt a knot in her stomach. The article detailed the accusations against Roderick, the crimes, the diverted funds. It was devastating, not because she felt sorry for him, but because it confirmed what she had always suspected, that he was capable of anything, that she had been married to someone who had no scruples, no limits. That night, Marina talked to Lucy about it. Lucy asked how she was feeling. Marina said she felt relief. Relief for having left before the consequences of his actions affected her too. Relief for having chosen to build an honest, dignified, clean life. She said she didn't wish Roderick ill, but she also felt absolutely nothing for him. It was as if that man was a stranger, someone who passed through her life, caused pain but left no roots. Lucy smiled and said that Marina had an incredible ability to forgive without forgetting, to move on without carrying resentment, and that this was rare, special, powerful. Days passed and Marina got closer and closer to her due date. The doctor recommended she slow down, avoid stress, and rest. Marina tried, but it was difficult. She had so many projects, so many ideas, so many women depending on her. But one afternoon, feeling a strong contraction, she got scared. Lucy was with her, grabbed the bag Marina had prepared weeks ago, and took her to the hospital. It was a public hospital, simple but with a competent and welcoming team. Marina couldn't afford an expensive private maternity ward, but she didn't care. She knew she would be well cared for. Labor was long, painful, exhausting. Marina screamed, cried, clung to Lucy's hand as if it were a life raft in the middle of the ocean. No one else was there. No mother because she lived far away and couldn't afford to travel. No husband because the one she had was worthless. No large family because it had always been just her and her parents. But she had Lucy. And Lucy was there, firm, strong, holding her hand, wiping her sweat, whispering words of encouragement, telling her she was strong, that she would make it, that soon she would hold her son in her arms. And then, after hours of struggle, the baby was born. A boy, small, perfect, with a piercing cry and tightly shut eyes. The nurse placed the baby on Marina's chest, and at that instant, the world stopped. Marina looked at that crumpled little face, at those tiny fingers, and felt a love so overwhelming that it seemed impossible to fit inside her chest. She cried. She cried with relief, with joy, with gratitude. She kissed her son's forehead and whispered that he was loved, so loved, that she would do anything for him, that he would never be alone. Lucy cried too, moved, taking photos with her phone, documenting that moment. She asked what the name would be. Marina had decided weeks ago. David. Because David was the small one who defeated the giant. And that baby, born amidst so much struggle, was proof that the small can win. Marina stayed 3 days in the hospital. She received visits from some resellers who lived in London, received flowers and gifts sent by followers from all over the United Kingdom. The simple hospital room became colourful, full of balloons, cards, messages of affection. Marina read every message, moved. She realized she wasn't alone, that she had built around her a support network, a community of women who cared, who rooted for her, who celebrated her victories as if they were their own. When she returned home with David in her arms, Marina felt a mixture of fear and determination. Fear because now she was responsible for a life, determination because she knew she would do everything right. David slept in the white crib she had bought wrapped in the blanket a follower had knitted especially for him. Marina spent hours just looking at her son, still unable to believe he was real, that he was hers. The first few days were chaotic. David woke up every 2 hours, cried, fed, slept again. Marina, exhausted, could barely sleep. Lucy started helping, bringing ready-made food, holding David so Marina could shower, providing support in everything. But even with all the help, Marina felt the weight of single motherhood. There was no one to share the task, no one to take turns during the night, no one to tell her she was doing a good job when insecurity struck. But Marina persisted. In the intervals when David slept, she worked. She answered messages, organized orders, planned new launches. Some followers criticized, saying she should be focused only on the baby. But Marina knew it wasn't that simple. She needed to work to support her son. She didn't have the luxury of taking months of maternity leave. She was an entrepreneur, a mother, responsible for an entire network of women, and even exhausted, even insecure, she continued. It was during this period, with David only 1 month old, that Marina received a call that would change everything. It was from an assistant to Edward Matthews, one of the most influential businessmen in the United Kingdom. Edward was known for supporting social causes, for investing in women-led startups, for using his influence to give visibility to projects with social impact. The assistant explained that Edward had seen Marina's videos, had followed her trajectory, and wanted to meet her personally. He said Edward was organizing a large female entrepreneurship event in London and would like to invite Marina to be one of the main speakers. Marina was speechless. Edward Matthews was a legend in the business world, a man who had started from scratch, built an empire, and now used his position to make a difference. She knew his story, knew he was respected, admired, and he wanted to meet her. He wanted her to speak at an event alongside established businesswomen, executives from large corporations. Marina thanked him, said it was an honor, but that she would need to think about it. She hung up the phone with trembling hands. She called Lucy immediately, told her everything. Lucy screamed with joy on the other end of the line, said Marina had to accept that it was a unique opportunity, that it could open unimaginable doors. But Marina was insecure. She had given birth a month ago. She was still learning to be a mother. Her body was tired, her mind exhausted. How was she going to speak at an event of that magnitude? How was she going to speak to hundreds of people without trembling, without stuttering, without sounding like an imposter? But then she looked at David sleeping in his crib. She looked at that baby who depended on her, who needed her to be strong, courageous, fearless. And she thought that if she had come this far going through everything she had, then she could take this next step. She could face this next challenge. She could show that women don't have to choose between being mothers and being successful professionals. They can be both. They should be both if they so desire. She called the assistant back and accepted the invitation. They scheduled a preliminary meeting to align details. Edward wanted to meet her before the event, better understand her story, see how they could work together not only at that event, but on future projects. Marina accepted everything, still not quite believing it was happening. The meeting was scheduled for a week later, in a sleek office in the heart of London's financial district. Marina was extremely nervous. She spent days choosing what to wear, rehearsing what to say, trying to control her anxiety. Lucy stayed with David so she could go peacefully. Marina thanked her with tears in her eyes, saying she didn't know how to repay everything Lucy was doing for her. Lucy just smiled and said that seeing Marina win was enough repayment. On the day of the meeting, Marina wore a simple but elegant outfit, tied her hair in a discreet bun and applied light makeup. She looked in the mirror and saw someone different. She was no longer the broken woman who left an abusive marriage. She was an entrepreneur, a mother, a fighter. She left home with a racing heart but her head held high. Edward's office was impressive. Huge glass windows with a view of the city, modern decor, attentive staff. Marina was greeted by the secretary and led to a meeting room. A few minutes later, Edward entered. He was a man in his 50s, grey. Hair, kind eyes, a welcoming smile. He greeted Marina with a firm handshake and a sincere, "It's a pleasure to meet you." They talked for almost 2 hours. Edward asked questions about Marina's journey, about the challenges, about the lessons learned. Marina spoke openly, without filters, telling about the difficult marriage, about the lonely pregnancy, about the first sales, about the viralization, about the creation of the brand. Edward listened attentively, taking notes, asking pertinent questions. Marina realized that he was not just there out of courtesy. He was genuinely interested, genuinely impressed. At the end of the conversation, Edward made a proposal. He said he wanted to invest in the New Beginnings brand, not just financially, but strategically. He wanted to connect Marina with larger suppliers, with national distributors, with branding and marketing specialists. He wanted to help her scale the business sustainably, without losing its essence, without losing its purpose. And in return, he didn't ask for a majority stake or control. He only asked for a small percentage, just to ensure he was aligned with the growth. Marina was speechless. This was more than she had ever imagined, but at the same time she was scared. She didn't want to lose control of the brand she had built with so much sweat. She didn't want it to become just another soulless shelf product. Edward noticed her hesitation and said something that deeply touched Marina. He said he understood her fear, that he too had started from nothing and knew what it was like to protect one's own dream. But that growing did not mean losing identity. It meant reaching more people, impacting more lives, expanding the purpose. And that he was not there to control, he was there to add value. Marina asked for time to think. Edward agreed, said she could take as long as she needed, that it was an important decision and should be made calmly. They said goodbye with a cordial handshake, and Marina left that office with her head spinning. She went home, picked up David, sat on the balcony and looked at the city below. She thought about everything she had lived through, everything she had achieved. And then she thought about the future. The future she wanted to build for her son, for the resellers, for all the women who believed in the brand. She talked to Lucy, to Renee the lawyer, to some of her closest resellers. All said it was a golden opportunity, that she should accept, that Edward was a serious, respected person who would not harm her. Marina was still in doubt, but deep down she knew the right answer. She had to take the risk. She had to take the leap, because not growing out of fear meant betraying all the women who believed in her, who depended on her, who saw her as an example. She called Edward a week later and accepted the proposal. Edward was visibly happy, said they would do great things together. In the following days, they signed contracts, ironed out details, and began working on strategic planning. Marina felt dizzy. She was moving from a small apartment in Islington and entering the real corporate world. But this time, she entered with her head held high as the owner of her own business, as the protagonist of her own story. The Women's Entrepreneurship event happened a month later. It was in a 5-star hotel in central London. Marina arrived nervous but determined. She wore a simple but elegant dress which she had bought in a popular store. She had no expensive jewelry, no designer bag. But she had authenticity. And in that room full of executives, businesswomen, powerful women, it was her authenticity that shone brightest. The room was packed. Over 500 women sat in chairs arranged in perfect rows, all facing the stage where Marina would soon ascend. The event had started in the morning, with talks by CEOs of large corporations, businesswomen who commanded multi-million-pound businesses, executives who held strategic positions in multinationals. All had inspiring stories, all had impressive resumes, and there was Marina, a cosmetics reseller who a few months ago didn't even have her own bank account, about to share the stage with those giants. Backstage, Marina tried to control her breathing. Her hands were sweating, her heart was pounding, her voice seemed to have vanished. An event producer approached, offered water, asked if everything was all right. Marina nodded yes, but it wasn't. She was terrified. She thought about giving up, about saying she felt ill, that she couldn't do it. But then she remembered David, who was at home with Lucy. She remembered all the women in the New Beginnings network who were watching the live stream online. She remembered the followers, who sent messages saying they would be rooting for her. She remembered everything she had been through to get there, and she took a deep breath. She could do this. She had to do this. When her name was announced, Marina walked onto the stage with trembling legs. The audience applauded politely, without much enthusiasm. After all, no one there really knew who she was. These were women accustomed to renowned speakers, polished speeches, impeccable presentations. Marina positioned herself behind the podium, adjusted the microphone, looked at that sea of unfamiliar faces, and for a second she thought about reciting the rehearsed speech she had prepared in recent days, something technical, beautiful, correct, but then she decided not to. She decided that if she was there, she would be herself, authentic, raw, true. She started speaking softly, her voice still insecure. She said her name, said she was 27, that she was the mother of a 2-month-old baby. She said that a year ago she was married to a man she thought was successful, but who in reality was just dishonestly rich. She said she was humiliated, betrayed, controlled. She said she left home pregnant, penniless, with no prospects, with nothing but the clothes on her back and a small suitcase. The audience began to pay real attention. The heavy silence that was once merely polite transformed into an attentive, engaged silence. Marina felt the shift in energy and continued. She talked about the first sales, about knocking door to door with her growing belly, about the fear of being rejected, about the shame of asking. She talked about the homemade videos she recorded on a borrowed phone, about the unexpected virality, about the community that formed around her. And then Marina did something that wasn't in the script. She stopped talking about business strategies, about numbers, about growth, and she started talking about pain, about the pain of feeling invisible in a relationship, about the pain of carrying a child alone while the father is busy with another woman, about the pain of being told you are not enough, that you are not up to par, that you are weak, and about the transformation that happens when you decide you will no longer accept that, when you decide that your pain will not define you, but rather propel you. The audience was in absolute silence. Several women had tears in their eyes. Marina saw touched faces, lives being stirred by her words. She continued, now speaking about purpose. She said that the New Beginnings brand was not just about cosmetics. It was about giving broken women a chance to rebuild themselves. It was about proving that the past does not determine the future, that it is always possible to start over, no matter the age, no matter the situation, no matter how many times you have fallen. It is always possible to get up. She concluded by saying that there were 500 powerful, successful women in that room who held prominent positions, but that true power was not in titles, positions, or bank accounts. True power was in lifting another woman who was on the ground, in extending a hand, in sharing knowledge, in opening doors, and that she, Marina, was not there to impress anyone, but to remind everyone that behind every successful woman there is a story of struggle, and that no struggle is too small or too insignificant to be valued. When she finished, there was a second of silence. And then the audience erupted in applause. It wasn't polite applause, it was emotional, enthusiastic, genuine applause. Many women stood up, applauding. Marina, still on stage, couldn't hold back her tears. She cried right there in front of everyone, without shame, without hiding. She cried with relief, with gratitude, with accomplishment. Edward Matthews, who was sitting in the front row, was also visibly moved. He stood up and applauded fervently. After the lecture, Marina was surrounded by dozens of women wanting to talk, exchange contacts, and compliment her. Businesswomen gave out business cards, offered partnerships, extended invitations. Journalists requested interviews. Influencers competed for collaborations. Marina, dizzy with it all, tried to respond to everyone politely, but was clearly overwhelmed. Edward noticed and intervened politely but firmly, saying that Marina needed to rest and that his team would schedule contacts later. They left the main hall and went to a private room in the hotel. Edward said that the lecture had been the best of the day, that Marina had touched hearts in a way no other speaker had. He said he was absolutely certain he had made the right choice by investing in her, because Marina was not just an entrepreneur. She was a born leader, a genuine inspiration. Marina thanked him, still processing everything. Edward then said that he had already spoken with some investors present at the event, and that 3 major pharmacy chains were interested in forming partnerships to distribute New Beginnings products in their stores. Partnerships that could mean contracts worth millions of pounds. Marina was speechless. Millions of pounds. She, who a year ago didn't even have £50 to buy food, was now talking about £1,000,000 contracts. It seemed surreal, unreal, impossible. But it was true, and it was happening. Edward said his team would schedule meetings with the chain representatives for the following week, that Marina just needed to prepare, bring solid proposals, and be herself. Marina agreed, still stunned. She returned home that night exhausted, but radiant. David was sleeping in his crib. Lucy was in the living room watching television. When Marina entered, Lucy stood up and ran to hug her. She said she had watched the entire lecture live, that she had cried from beginning to end, that she was so proud she couldn't contain herself. They hugged tightly, crying together, celebrating together. Lucy said Marina had come so far, but that this was just the beginning, that even greater things would come. Marina smiled, tired but happy. She said none of this would have been possible without Lucy, that she would be eternally grateful for having found a true friend precisely at the darkest moment of her life. The following weeks were a whirlwind of exponential growth. The New Beginnings brand surpassed all projections. The products sold in pharmacies became the most sought after in their category. The network of resellers reached 5,000 women. Annual revenue hit £10 million. Marina graced the covers of business magazines, was invited to give lectures at international events, and received awards for female entrepreneurship. She became a case study in business schools, an example of triumph in television programs. But what Marina was most proud of were not the numbers, the awards, or the fame. It was looking at the women in the New Beginnings network and seeing transformed lives, seeing single mothers who could now support their children with dignity, seeing women who left abusive relationships and found financial independence, seeing stories that echoed hers but now had a different ending, an ending of victory, of triumph, of new beginnings. Marina moved into the apartment she bought, lovingly decorated each room, creating a welcoming space for David to grow up in. On quiet nights after putting her son to sleep, she sat on the balcony and looked at the city lights. She thought about everything she had lived through, all the tears shed, all the moments she wanted to give up but didn't. And she felt gratitude. Gratitude for the pain that strengthened her, for the fall that taught her to rise, for the darkness that made her value the light. David grew up healthy, happy, surrounded by love. Marina was a present, dedicated mother who made a point of being there for every important moment. But she was also an active entrepreneur, an inspiring leader, a woman who did not give up her own dreams to be a mother. She proved that it was possible to be both, that women do not have to choose between motherhood and career. They can have both if they so desire, and they can excel at both. Edward continued to be a present and attentive business partner. Over time, their relationship naturally evolved into a genuine friendship. They lunched together to discuss strategies, exchanged messages about ideas for new projects, laughed at inside jokes that only they understood, and at times, longer glances suggested that perhaps there was something more there. But neither of them was in a hurry. They knew that if it was meant to happen, it would happen at the right time. One late December afternoon, almost a year after the store's inauguration, Marina received an unexpected invitation. One of the largest television networks in the United Kingdom wanted to make a documentary about her story, a 1-hour special, telling her journey from beginning to end, showing the resellers, the brands backstage, the social impact of the project. Marina hesitated, exposing her life even more, reliving painful moments, reopening old wounds. Was it worth it? She talked to Lucy, who as always was the voice of wisdom. Lucy said that Marina's story was not just hers, it was the story of all women who had lived something similar, and that telling this story broadly, honestly, completely could save lives. It could show a woman who is at rock bottom that there is a way out, that there is hope, that there are new beginnings. Marina reflected and decided to accept, but with one condition, that the documentary would not just be about her, that it would also show the stories of several resellers in the network, giving voice to these anonymous women who were also heroes of their own journeys. The documentary was filmed over 3 months, emotional interviews, touching testimonials, backstage footage, intimate moments. Marina cried several times during the filming, recalling the pain, but she also smiled, celebrating the victory. The program aired on a Sunday night in prime time. The audience was record-breaking. More than 15 million people watched. Social media exploded. Marina became a trending topic. Messages of support, identification, and gratitude poured in by the thousands. But the most impactful moment of the documentary was the end. Marina was on her apartment balcony, holding David, now 18 months old, talkative and smiling. She looked at the city and said that 2 years ago, she didn't believe she would be there. She didn't believe she would be able to support a child, build a business, inspire anyone. But that life had a curious way of surprising us. That rock bottom, however terrifying, can be the necessary impetus for the greatest leap. And then Marina said something that stuck in the minds of those who watched. She said that revenge was not screaming, not destroying those who hurt us. Revenge was silent, built day by day, brick by brick. It was proving that you are more than they tried to make you believe you were. It was rising so high that those who tried to bring you down have to look up to see you. It was becoming unattainable, not out of arrogance, but out of greatness. And that she had not sought revenge by screaming, she had sought revenge by winning. The last scene of the documentary showed Marina and David playing in the living room, laughing, happy. And a voiceover narration said that Marina's story was proof that no fall is permanent, that no pain is infinite, and that always, always it is possible to start anew. Dear listeners, we hope Marina's story has deeply touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of triumph, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what stood out most to you in this story. Every day, we bring intense narratives like this, revealing the deepest and most resilient side of the human soul. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode with a new story that will move and inspire you.